Okay, so let's continue with our next video in our practice exam questions for AWS certified developer associate exam. So let's read question number 81. A company is planning to use AWS code deploy to deploy an application to AWS Lambda. So they are planning to deploy their application to AWS Lambda, which is serverless, and deployment will be done using code deploy, which is also the AWS service. During the deployment of a new version of the application, so it means uh, okay, the company initially must expose only 10% of the live traffic to the new version of the deployed application. Then every 10 minutes, the company must route another 10% of the live traffic of new version of the deployed application until all live traffic is routed. So basically, let's suppose in your Lambda, some application is already running and you change your code and you want to redeploy to your code to the AWS Lambda using AWS code deploy pipeline. And what you want is because many user are many users are already using that code, if something is going to be happen, then all the users are going to be impacted. So you want uh, when you are going to deploy the Lambda or your application, the new application or new version, that is only going to be access only for the 10% of the users, and after 10 minutes then remaining 10%, and after 10 minutes then remaining 10%, and after 10 minutes the remaining 10%. So that is incremental order. So what you will do, so which deployment strategy you are going to do? Code deploy once at a time? Wrong, because if you are going to deploy once at a time is like everything at a time, like 100% at a time, then this is not something which the question has been asked. So a lambda canary 10% 10 minutes. Canary means like 10% first time, and after 10 minutes the remaining 90%. But here it says then every 10 minutes, so we need to deploy 10%. So it looks like a linear, so lambda linear is the correct answer. This is the ECS, so in the question we are using lambda, so ECS is wrong. So C is the correct answer. Question number 82. A developer want to use AWS Elastic Beanstalk to test a new version of an application in test environment. Which development method offer the fastest deployment? Okay, so some application is running on AWS Beanstalk and he wants to deploy some new version. What is the fastest approach? Let's figure it out. Immutable means, let's suppose your application is running, you are not going to touch the existing environment. You are going to create a new environment and you are going to deploy your application to the new environment. And once that environment will be healthy, then you are going to decommission the existing environment. So it's a long process. Rolling. Rolling means you are going to deploy in increment fashion. Rolling with additional batch. So you are going to spin up one extra EC2 instance. Let's suppose it is running on some two, three EC2 instances. You are going to spin up some extra EC2 instance, and you are going to roll your application slowly and slowly there, and so that the full capacity has been maintained. And then after that, the original one will be decommissioned all at once. Just um, deploy everything in a single go. Doesn't matter whether it fail or pass. So all at once. All at once is the fastest one. This is the correct answer. Because in other cases, you have to decommission the earlier instances. Question number 83. A developer has built an application that inserts data into Amazon DynamoDB. So one application is inserting the data into DynamoDB. The table is configured to use provisioned capacity, right? So it's the provisioned capacity. Provisioned capacity means like when you create the DynamoDB table, you have set up, okay, you spin up your table maybe using 20 RCU, 20 WCU. So it's not on demand. The application is deployed on a bus stable nano EC2 instance. So this application which is trying to run on DynamoDB, this application is running on EC2 instance. So from EC2, you are writing to DynamoDB. The application logs show that the application has been failing because of this error. Application has been failing because of provisioned throughput exceed exception error. What action should the developer take to resolve this issue? Choose to move the application to a larger EC instance. So wrong. So application is running fine. This error is basically throughput exceed exception provision, because when it's trying to write to the DynamoDB, it's not able to handle uh, maybe s- many queries are coming in a single time, so it's not able to handle everything. So moving your application to EC instance, wrong. Increase the number of read capacity, wrong, because our application is trying to insert the data, so read capacity doesn't work here. Reduce the frequency of request uh, to DynamoDB by implementing exponential backup. So that looks correct, because many number of requests are going together. Then we are getting provision throughput exceed exception. So it's getting exceed. So what we can do is we can reduce the number of requests by implementing exponential backup. C can be correct. Increase the frequency of request. So wrong. Change the capacity mode. Yeah, you can change the capacity mode to on demand as well if you want. So maybe C and D. Yeah, C and D. Question number 84. A developer is trying deploying an application on Amazon EC2 instance that run in account A. So you have one account A, and in that account you have EC2 instances and your applications running on EC2. In certain cases, the application needs to read data from a private Amazon S3 bucket in account B. So whatever application you are running on EC2, that needs to access the S3 bucket, which looks okay. But the catch here is this EC2 instance is in account A, but bucket is in account B. So basically, it's cross account. The developer must provide the application access to the S3 bucket. So this account, or basically this EC2 wants to access the bucket in another account, right? So the developer wants to provide the access, but without exposing the S3 bucket. So basically, don't want to make it public. Okay, what action should the developer do? Let's try to eliminate or figure it out. Create an IAM role with S3 read permission in account B can be the correct answer, because if you want to do some cross account, like EC2 instance is running in account A and EC2 instance trying to connect with the S3 bucket which is in account B, so you need to assume the role in the another account. And if you need to assume the role in the another account, so one role should be there in the another account, and that role should have access to the S3 bucket. So create an IAM role with S3 read permission. Update the instance profile IAM role in account A with S3 read permission. This looks wrong, because S3 is in another bucket. You are trying to create a role in account A, which is okay, but S3 is in different account. So within same account, you can't access the S3, right? Or you can't give the permission to IAM role. Make the S3 bucket public wrong, because its question says you can't expose the S3 bucket. So B and C eliminated. Configure the bucket policy in account B to grant permission to the instance profile role. Uh, Correct, because this is the EC2 instance. So you created a role that has the S3 permission, and when this instance profile role, so this instance profile role trying to assume the role in the account B, and this account B has the S3 permission already, and you can configure the bucket, and you can give the permission to that instance role which is trying to assume. Add a trust policy that allows S3 get permission. So trust policy is basically STS policy, not the S3 policy. So CE looks wrong. A and D looks correct, or even using the elimination approach, this looks wrong, because trust policy is not S3 get. Trust policy is like STS. Public you can't do. This is wrong. So remaining is A and D. They shared B and D, but as per me, it's A and D. Even most of the people says A and D. So a developer at a company recently created a serverless application to process and show data from business reports. So it's serverless application. The UI allows user to select and start processing the files. The UI display a message that the result is available to view. The application uses AWS step function with AWS Lambda function to process the files. The developers use Amazon API Gateway and Lambda function to create an API to support the UI. The company's UI team reports that the request to process a file is often returning timeout error because of the size or complexity of the files. The UI team wants the API to provide an immediate response so that the UI can display a message while the files are being processed. So basically, from the UI, you are trying to call an API, Amazon API Gateway, and Amazon API Gateway calling the Lambda function. And from the UI, you are trying to upload some files, and that file is going to the Lambda function to for the processing. But because of the size of the files, maybe Lambda function is like taking some time, and the UI team wants is they want to immediately display the response while the files are being processed. So they said, okay, I submitted my request over the console or over the web UI, just mention, okay, your request has been submitted, even though at the backend request is being processed. So basically, you don't want to make uh, you don't want to wait for the Lambda to finish. The backend process that is invoked by the API and needs to send an email. So what should the developer do? So basically, it's kind of asynchronous processing. Asynchronous processing means if you are calling the Lambda, you are not going to wait for the Lambda and immediately you are going to return the response. So it's basically kind of asynchronous. So let's figure it out. Chain the API gateway route to add an X Amazon invocation type uh, with the event static value of event in the integration and deploy. So this looks correct because we are calling the Lambda using the Amazon API gateway and UI is calling the API gateway. So using the UI, you have to tell something because you are calling the REST API. So within the API gateway, you have to pass some type of header, which is going to tell the Lambda shall it run synchronously or asynchronously. If you so using this parameter, let me show you. If you hit enter, see using this parameter, you can set this asynchronous or synchronous. You can decide it. X image invocation type header, a static value of event for client to decide whether it's invocation or synchronous or asynchronous. Okay. So change the configuration of the Lambda function that implements the request to processor. Configure the maximum age or event of the Lambda. No, wrong. Change the API gateway timeout value to match the Lambda function timeout. Even you are going to change that. It means okay, when the Lambda is going to finish, then it's. But we want the responsibility. So see also wrong. Change the API gateway route to add an X Amazon target header with a static value of async. Maybe you are going to mm, choose option D just by looking at the word async, but it's wrong because X Amazon target. So this is used for something else. So if show you X Amazon target making API request, X Amazon target. Specify the resource explorer namespace version and the operation that you want to perform. So basically, let's suppose from the API gateway, you want to perform put operation into DynamoDB or list operation from the S3. So that operation, basically Amazon target. What is your target on the Amazon DynamoDB along with the operation which you want to perform? All right. So as an example, so they have tell so like get tag values from the particular. So you need to do that. So this is also wrong. So A is the correct answer. Question number 86. An e-commerce application is running behind an load balancer. The developer observes some unexpected load during non-peak hours. The developer want to analyze patterns of the client IP address. Okay. Which HTTP header should the developer use? So if you want to know the information of the client IP, you always use X forwarded for who is forwarding the request. Proto is the protocol that whether it's HTTP or HTTPS. Host is which host machine port is the port number. X4 read for is the client IP. So C is the correct answer. A developer needs to create an application that supports SAML, security assertion markup language, and authentication with social media providers. It must allow access to AWS services, which AWS service or feature you will use with the least amount of additional coding. So as soon as you figure it out, na some kind of authentication, so Cognito should come, and as soon as the social media come, Cognito identity provider should come. So Lambda is wrong. Cognito user pool is just for the sign up, but for the authentication and using the social media, Cognito identity pool. B is the correct answer. 88. A developer is designing a serverless application for e-commerce website. An Amazon API gateway API exposes AWS Lambda for billing, payment, and user operations. So API gateway, and then after the API gateway, we have the Lambda. The website features shopping carts for the users. The shopping carts must stored for extended period of time, and will be retrieved frequently by the front end application. So basically, let's suppose the user is like there is an e-commerce website like Amazon or Flipkart. The user is adding some item into the carts, and we want and it should be in the carts for the long time, and when the user will see from the UI, it should like display immediately, right? So how you are going to do it? It is serverless application. The load on the application you will significant based on the time of the day and promotional sales that are offered. The application must be scaled automatically uh, to meet the changing needs. Okay. Store the data objects on a major RDS. So they said like as soon as you trying to add some item into the cart, you did the entry into the RDS database and then use the elastic cache, uh, so that because whenever you are want to see from the front end application, you should able to retrieve frequently. So you need to use elastic cache, otherwise the data should be take some time to grab from the RDS. But this looks correct. But if you see here, the application must be able to scale automatically. So in the RDS, you need to manually configure. So doesn't look correct or maybe correct, but let's look the other option. Store the object in EC2. No, totally wrong. Store the object in S3 bucket and then use the cloud front. This can be correct, but generally for the cloud front, we use the static content. But adding the items into the carts are the dynamic content. So C is also wrong. Store the data of project in DynamoDB. So it doesn't matter whether you in RDS or DynamoDB, fine. And then use the DEX. So DEX is also a cache. Similarly, based on Elastic Cache. So this looks correct. So D looks correct because DynamoDB is like highly scalable and it automatically scale. We this is going to satisfy our second condition as well. So D is the correct answer. Question number 89. A company is migrating its own premise data to RDS for MySQL. The company has a read heavy workload and wants to make sure it refactor its code to achieve optimum read performance. So RDS is running. Application want to read data from RDS. It's read heavy workload. So what should you do? Add database retries to effectively use RDS with vertical scaling. No, use RDS multi-agent deployment. No, add a connection string to use RDS read replica. That is correct. If it's a read replica, you can create a read replica and you can change your code to because when you create a read replica, the endpoint is different. So you have to modify your code to connect with that particular endpoint. So add a connection string to use the RDS read replica for read queries. Add a connection string to read replica on EC2 instance only. Wrong. C is the correct answer. Question number 90. An application running on EC2 opens connection to an RDS SQL Server database. So application running on EC2 trying to connect with RDS. The developer doesn't want to store the username and password. So because one application trying to connect with the RDS has some user ID and password, but the developer don't want to store the user and password. Uh, in the code, the developer also wants to automatically rotate. So we need to store it somewhere where the rotation can be possible. What is the most secure way? We know it should be secret manager, but let's see. Create an IAM role that has the permission to access the database. Attach the role to the EC2 instance. No, because here they have mentioned about the username and the password, not what the role. AWS secret manager to store the credential. Correct. We can store the credential to secret manager if you don't want to store into the code. And because secret manager, if you store the credential, the secret manager, automatically rotation also will be happen. And then you can retrieve the credential from the script. Store the credential in encrypted text file in S3 bucket are wrong. Store the username and credential in the source code totally wrong. So B is the correct answer. So that's it. That's the end of the video. And thank you.